The night before, I would walk across that stage in my dress uniform. The man I'd been forced to call Stepfather for 14 years decided to show me exactly what he thought of my achievement. He laughed at the badge on my chest, mocked the honor cords draped over my shoulder, then raised his fist, but I'd already raised my phone. By morning, the entire town would see the video. By evening, he'd see me on that graduation stage and watch my revenge unfold layer by calculated layer. My name is Maya Caldwell, and I've spent the last 6 months learning how to protect and serve my community at the Mountain State Public Safety Academy. Tonight, 12 hours before I'd walk across that stage to receive my certification, I stood in the cramped kitchen of the house I'd called home for too long, watching Roy Baxter's face twist with the familiar contempt I'd endured since I was 12 years old. "Look at you," he sneered, circling me like a predator sizing up prey. The fluorescent light flickered overhead, casting shadows across his weathered face. "Playing dress-up in that costume? You think this cheap polyester makes you somebody special?" I kept my breathing steady, a technique from de-escalation training. My dress uniform hung pristine on its hanger behind me, navy blue with silver accents, the academy crest embroidered over the heart. Tomorrow, I'd wear it with pride. Tonight, it was just another target for his rage. "It's not a costume," I said quietly. "I earned this." Roy's laugh was sharp as broken glass. "Earned you've been bleeding me and your mother dry for years, taking our money for your little fantasy camp. $54,000, Maya. That's what you owe this family." The lie burned in my throat. I'd paid $1,500 every month for 3 years my contribution to household expenses, while Roy collected assistance from Cedar Bridge Fellowship, claiming no one helped with bills. I had the bank transfers to prove it, screenshots saved in 3 different cloud accounts. My mother, Elaine, sat at the dining table, staring at her hands. She'd perfected the art of disappearing in plain sight whenever Roy's voice rose. Trent, Roy's son from his first marriage, leaned against the doorframe, phone out, already recording for his Instagram story. At 28, he still lived at home, still fed off his father's poison. Nothing to say. Roy stepped closer. I could smell the bourbon on his breath, see the red spider veins across his nose. "That's what I thought. You're nothing but a—" "I start my job next week," I interrupted. "North Star Freight Solutions hired me for their security division. I'll be moving out tomorrow after graduation." The words hung in the air like a lit fuse. I saw the moment they registered, watched his face shift from mockery to rage. This wasn't part of his script. I was supposed to cower, apologize, beg for his approval that would never come. "Moving out." His voice dropped to a whisper, more dangerous than any shout. "After everything we've done for you." I felt my phone in my jacket pocket, already recording. I'd started documenting everything 2 weeks ago, after our instructor's module on evidence preservation. "Protect yourself first," she'd said. "You can't save others if you don't survive." Roy grabbed my training certificate from the counter, the one documenting my completion of 600 hours of intensive training. His thick fingers crumpled the edges. "This is toilet paper. You're playing soldier. Little girl. You want to see what real strength looks like?" The shove came fast, slamming me back against the wall. Picture frames rattled. My mother's sharp intake of breath cut through the room. Trent laughed, getting it all on video, adding commentary for his followers. "Stop," I said clearly, loud enough for the recording. "Don't touch me again." "Or what?" Roy's fist connected with my stomach, driving the air from my lungs. I doubled over, tasting copper. "You'll call your playground supervisors, file a report." "You're pathetic." Through the pain, I kept my hand steady in my pocket, angle perfect to capture everything. The academy had taught me about force multipliers tools that amplify your strength. Evidence was mine. I straightened slowly, meeting his eyes. "I'm graduating tomorrow at 10 a.m., with or without your blessing." He grabbed my honor cord from the table, the gold-braided rope signifying top 10% of my class, and held it up mockingly. You think anyone will give a damn about this? You're trash. Maya. Always have been. This uniform doesn't change that. With deliberate slowness, he tore the cord in half. I didn't react, didn't cry, didn't plead. I simply watched him destroy the symbol of my achievement, knowing the real victory wasn't in the rope, but in what came next. Every second of this was being preserved, uploaded, backed up. Get out of my sight, he spat, throwing the torn pieces at my feet. And if you embarrass this family at that circus tomorrow, you'll regret it. I bent to collect the pieces, each movement deliberate despite the ache in my ribs. I'll be leaving now, I announced. Harper's expecting me. As I walked past Trent, still filming, he whispered, "Wait till everyone sees what a loser you really are." I paused, looking directly into his camera. "Yes," I said clearly. "Wait till everyone sees." The night air hit my face like cold water as I stepped outside. Blood pooled in my mouth from where I'd bitten my cheek. My ribs screamed with each breath. But my phone had captured everything: Roy's threats, the assault, Trent's complicity, my mother's silence. Tomorrow, I would graduate. And tomorrow, Roy Baxter would learn what happened when you mistook patience for weakness, preparation for passivity. The revolution wouldn't be violent, it would be surgical. The first time Roy Baxter entered our lives. I was 12 years old, standing in the doorway of our apartment watching my mother giggle like a teenager. He'd brought flowers, yellow roses that would wilt within days. Much like his facade of kindness, Mom had been alone for 3 years since Dad died in a construction accident, and Roy must have smelled her vulnerability like blood in the water. "Maya, sweetie," Mom had said, her eyes bright with hope I'd soon learn to dread. "This is Roy. He's going to be joining us for dinner." Roy had smiled then, all teeth and calculated charm. "Your mom tells me you're quite the student. Honor roll every semester." He'd ruffled my hair like I was 5, not 12. Smart girls go far in this world. If only I'd known how quickly smart girl would become ungrateful brat in his vocabulary. The transformation was methodical. First came the small criticisms, delivered with a laugh to soften their edges. My grades were good, but could be better. My part-time job at 14 was cute, but not really contributing. Every achievement was minimized, every effort dismissed. Mom started echoing his words, her own voice disappearing into his. By the time I turned 16, Roy had perfected his system. I was working 30 hours a week at a grocery store while maintaining a 3.8 GPA. And somehow I was the burden. "Room and board aren't free," he'd say. "Hand out every Friday for my paycheck. Family contributes." The financial manipulation started subtly. First, it was $50 here and there for groceries, then $200 for utilities. By 18, I was transferring $1,500 monthly through Zelle and Venmo, electronic receipts creating a paper trail I didn't yet understand the value of. Meanwhile, Roy was at Cedar Bridge Fellowship every Sunday, head bowed in prayer, collecting sympathy and support checks for being a struggling stepfather raising an ungrateful girl. Pastor Williams would shake Roy's hand after service, pressing an envelope into his palm. "The Lord provides for those who sacrifice," he'd say. Roy would nod solemnly, pocketing money earned from my overnight shifts at North Star Freight Solutions, where I'd started loading trucks to pay for academy training. I discovered the depth of his deception accidentally. Mom had left her email open on the family computer, and there it was, a message from the church's financial assistance program. "Your monthly support of $800 has been approved for another 6 months. Brother Baxter, we understand the burden of a dependent adult child who refuses to contribute. Refuses to contribute. While my bank account showed $43,000 transferred to Roy over 3 years. While I ate ramen 5 nights a week to afford academy tuition. While he bought a new truck with what he called the Lord's blessings. The academy changed everything. 6 months of intensive training didn't just teach me defensive tactics and emergency response. It taught me about patterns. Domestic violence wasn't always bruises. Financial abuse was real. Gaslighting had a name. Our instructor, Lieutenant Morrison, had spent a full week on family violence. 70% of our calls involve household disputes, she'd explained, clicking through slides of statistics. You need to recognize the cycles: tension building, acute explosion, reconciliation, calm, then it starts again. I'd sat in that classroom, taking notes with steady hands while my insides churned. She was describing my home. Roy's pattern was textbook: the days of cold, silence tension, the explosive rage over something trivial acute, the next morning's gruff apology that wasn't really an apology reconciliation, then a few days of relative peace calm before it started again. Document everything, Lieutenant Morrison had emphasized. Evidence is your armor: photos, recordings, financial records, medical reports. Build your case before you need it. That night, I'd gone home and started my file. Screenshots of every transfer, photos of the bills I paid versus the assistance Roy received, recordings of his rants about my selfishness while Mom sat silent, Trent's social media posts showing off new gaming systems and designer clothes bought with Dad's hard-earned money, my money. The module on evidence preservation had been even more eye-opening. Chain of custody, contemporaneous documentation, third-party verification. I learned to email myself recordings immediately after incidents, creating timestamps. I opened a safety deposit box at a bank Roy didn't use, storing physical copies of everything. I gave Harper Quinn, my best friend from high school who was now a legal assistant, access to a cloud folder that updated automatically. "Why don't you just leave?" Harper had asked once, reviewing my growing collection of evidence. "Because he'll destroy her," I'd answered, meaning Mom. "She's completely dependent on him now, financially and emotionally. If I just vanish, he'll convince her I abandoned her. But if I can expose what he really is—" Harper had nodded slowly. "You're not running. You're building a case." "I'm building a bomb," I'd corrected. One made entirely of truth. The academy taught me about force multipliers, tools that amplify your strength beyond physical capability. They meant weapons, radios, backup. But I'd found my own force multipliers documentation, community witnesses, and the kind of patience that looked like weakness until it revealed itself as strategy. Tomorrow, Roy would learn that every insult, every stolen dollar, every moment of humiliation had been carefully cataloged. The girl he'd dismissed as nothing had been taking notes the entire time. The uniform he'd mocked wasn't just polyester and thread. It was proof that I'd survived him, succeeded despite him, and soon, very soon, I would expose him. The revolution starts with remembering every detail, every receipt, every wound that hardened into armor. The confrontation had been building all day like a storm system moving in from the mountains. Roy had been drinking since noon, his fury mounting with each beer as he realized I was serious about moving out. The acceptance letter from North Star's security division sat on the kitchen counter, crumpled from where he'd grabbed it, smoothed out where I'd reclaimed it. At 8:45 p.m., 12 hours before I'd walk across the graduation stage, everything exploded. "You think you're better than us." Roy's voice filled the living room where I was carefully pressing my dress uniform. The iron hissed steam, a sound like his rage made manifest. "Walking around here like you own the place, looking down on your family." I kept my movement steady, running the iron along the sleeve crease. My phone was propped against a stack of books, camera facing out, recording everything. "I'm just preparing for tomorrow. Roy, don't you dare dismiss me." He grabbed the iron from my hand, slamming it down on the board. The uniform sleeve beneath barely escaped singing. "Look at me when I'm talking to you." I turned to face him fully, noting Trent had appeared in the doorway with his phone out, already streaming to his Instagram story. "Look at this shit," Trent narrated to his followers. "Princess Maya thinks she's too good for us now." Roy picked up my achievement medal, the one for excellence in crisis management, and dangled it between his fingers. You know what this is, participation trophy garbage. You're playing cop, little girl, playing hero. He laughed, ugly and sharp. You couldn't protect yourself from a paper bag. Put it down, I said quietly. Or what? He held the medal up to the light, reading the inscription mockingly. For excellence in crisis management. You want to see a crisis? His fist closed around the medal, bending the bronze. The sound of metal warping seemed to echo in the silence. Mom sat frozen at the dining table, her eyes fixed on her clasped hands. She'd learned long ago that invisibility was her only defense. That's enough, I said, louder now, clear enough for both recordings, mine and Trent's. Roy threw the bent metal at my feet. You're nothing but a drain on this family. $40,000 for your stupid academy. Years of feeding you, clothing you, putting a roof over your head. And this is how you repay us, by abandoning your mother. 54,000, I corrected, knowing it would enrage him further. You said earlier it was 54,000 I owe this family. His face went purple. Don't get smart with me. Which is interesting, I continued, my voice steady despite my racing heart. Since I have records of 54,000 in transfers to you over the past 3 years, so either I've paid my debt, or you've been lying about the amount. The silence that followed was electric. Even Trent stopped narrating, his phone still recording but his mouth hanging open. Mom's head snapped up, confusion crossing her features. You lying little... Roy stepped forward, and I saw the moment he decided to cross the line from verbal to physical. His hand grabbed my uniform collar, yanking me forward. You want to play tough. Let me show you what tough really looks like. The shove sent me backward into the wall. My shoulder hit the family photo from Mom's wedding to Roy, sending it crashing to the floor, glass scattered across the hardwood. The symbolism wasn't lost on me. Stop, I said clearly, getting to my feet. You're assaulting me. This is battery. Roy laughed. Assault. This is discipline. Something you never learned. His fist connected with my stomach, doubling me over. The pain exploded through my core, but I kept my phone steady in my pocket, still recording. Trent whooped from the doorway. Finally, Dad's been too soft on her for years. He zoomed in with his camera. This is what happens when you disrespect family. Guys. Real consequences. I tasted blood where I'd bitten my tongue. Straightening slowly, I looked directly at Trent's camera. Yes, Trent. Make sure you get all of this. Every second. Something in my tone must have unsettled him because he lowered his phone slightly. Uncertainty crossing his features. Roy grabbed the honor cord from the ironing board, the gold-braided rope I'd earned for academic excellence. You see this? This is what your achievements are worth. He pulled it taut between his hands, then tore it apart with a vicious yank. Nothing. You're nothing. I watched the torn pieces fall to the floor among the broken glass. Each strand seemed to glow in the lamplight, transformed from achievement into evidence. Every second of this was being preserved in multiple formats, my recording, Trent's live stream, the security camera I'd installed in the corner last week that neither of them knew about. Are you done? I asked quietly. Roy's face contorted. Done? I haven't even started. You're not going to that joke of a ceremony tomorrow. You're going to call them right now and tell them you're dropping out. Then you're going to apologize to your mother for being such a disappointment. No. The word hung between us like a blade. What did you say to me? I said no. I pulled out my phone, making sure he could see it was recording. I'm done being your victim. Roy, I'm graduating tomorrow at 10 a.m. at Riverton High School Stadium, and you should know that everything that just happened, the assault, the battery, the destruction of property, it's all been documented. His face went from purple to white. You little... I'd think very carefully about your next move, I said, backing toward the door. Harper Quinn is expecting me. If I don't show up, she has instructions to forward all of this to the police, including the financial records showing your fraud with the church assistance program. The silence was absolute. Even Trent had stopped recording, his face pale as he realized he'd just live-streamed his father committing assault. I picked up my uniform from the ironing board, folding it carefully despite my shaking hands. I'll see you at graduation tomorrow. Or I won't. Either way, after tomorrow, everyone will know exactly who you really are. As I walked out the door, I heard Roy's roar of rage behind me, followed by the sound of more things breaking. But I didn't look back. The war had begun. Tomorrow would be the final battle. Harper's apartment smelled like coffee and legal documents when I arrived at 9:30 p.m., my ribs aching with each breath. She took one look at my face and immediately went into crisis mode, pulling out her phone to photograph the red mark on my cheek, the torn uniform collar, the blood on my lip. "Hospital first," she said, grabbing her keys. "Evidence first," I countered, pulling out my phone. "Then hospital." We spent the next hour creating an airtight chain of documentation. I uploaded the video to 3 different cloud services, emailed copies to Harper's work account with detailed timestamps, and created a written statement while everything was fresh. Harper, in full paralegal mode, organized everything into folders: physical assault, financial fraud, witness statements. "Pull up your banking app," Harper instructed, her fingers flying across her laptop keyboard. "We need every transfer documented." The numbers were staggering when laid out chronologically. $1,500 monthly for 36 months. $54,000 total. But that was just the Zelle and Venmo transfers. There were also the cash withdrawals, $300 here. $500 there always, with Roy's texted demands saved alongside them. "Look at this." I showed Harper an email from 8 months ago. He asked me to pay the property tax because he was short this month. $2,300. "While collecting church assistance," Harper muttered, screenshotting everything. "This is fraud. Maya. Federal wire fraud if any of the church money crossed state lines." At 11 p.m., we drove to Riverton General for medical documentation. The emergency room nurse, a woman named Patricia who'd seen too many domestic violence cases, was thorough and gentle. She photographed the bruising on my stomach, the swollen knuckle where I'd hit the wall, the cut inside my mouth. Each injury was cataloged, measured, described in clinical detail that would hold up in court. "You pressing charges?" Patricia asked quietly while drawing blood for the standard panel. "After tomorrow," I said. "I need to graduate first." She nodded, understanding. "The doctor will want x-rays of your ribs. That kind of blow can cause hairline fractures." While waiting for the radiology tech, I opened my laptop and pulled up 18 months of Roy's text messages. The pattern was clear when viewed in sequence. Demands for money escalated around the first of each month. Insults and threats intensified whenever I achieved something getting into the academy, passing my first certification exam, making the honor roll. "Jesus," Harper breathed, reading over my shoulder. "Look at this one from last Christmas." The message read, "You owe this family everything. Without me, you'd be nothing. Don't forget that when you're pretending to be somebody at that academy." "He sent that the day I got my acceptance letter," I said. Harper had contacted someone at Cedar Bridge Fellowship, a financial committee member who wished to remain anonymous but was horrified by what we'd uncovered. According to their records, Roy had been receiving $800 monthly for 2 years, with periodic additional emergency assistance. Total received $23,000. "He listed you as disabled and unable to work." Harper read from her notes. "Said you contributed nothing to household expenses and he was struggling to support you." The irony burned worse than my ribs. While I worked overnight shifts to pay him $1,500 monthly, he was collecting $800 in charity by claiming I was a burden. "There's more," Harper continued, pulling up Trent's Instagram. "Your stepbrother has been documenting his lifestyle pretty thoroughly." The evidence was damning. Designer shoes, gaming systems, a used BMW he'd bought 6 months ago, all while supposedly unemployed. His posts were tagged with gems like "Blessed Life" and "Dad Comes Through." One video from 3 weeks ago showed him opening a package containing a $2,000 gaming laptop. The caption, "Pops knows how to treat his real family." "Can you download all of these?" I asked. Already done. Also got screenshots of him live streaming tonight's assault. He deleted it, but I grabbed it first. By 1 a.m., we had everything organized into a comprehensive package: financial records showing my payments versus Roy's fraud, medical documentation of tonight's assault, video evidence from multiple angles, text messages establishing a pattern of abuse and extortion, character witnesses ready to testify: my supervisor at North Star, 2 academy instructors, even Patricia from the ER who'd seen too many victims stay silent. Now for the distribution list, Harper said, creating a new document. Who needs to see this? The list grew quickly: Pastor Williams and the entire financial committee at Cedar Bridge Fellowship, the Riverton Police Department's Domestic Violence Unit, the District Attorney's Office for Fraud Prosecution, Captain Willis at the Academy. Local media contacts Harper had through her law firm, Roy's employer at the construction company, even the IRS tip line, since I doubted Roy had reported the church assistance as income. When do we send it? Harper asked. 6:30 I said. Enough time for people to read it before graduation, but not enough time for Roy to stop the ceremony. Harper created a scheduled email, attaching everything. Subject line: evidence of fraud and assault. Urgent review required. You sure about this? She asked, finger hovering over the schedule button. Once this goes out, there's no taking it back. I thought about 14 years of diminishment, of my mother too broken to protect me, of every dollar stolen, every achievement mocked, every moment I'd been made to feel worthless. Send it. She clicked the button. In less than 6 hours, Roy's carefully constructed image would shatter. The man who stood in church every Sunday, who collected sympathy and checks while destroying his stepdaughter, would be exposed. You should sleep, Harper said, preparing the couch for me, but I couldn't. Instead, I sat at her kitchen table, staring at my torn honor cord. Tomorrow, I'd graduate without it, but I'd have something better: the truth, armed and aimed at everyone who'd enabled Roy's cruelty through ignorance or indifference. The revolution wouldn't be violent. It would be precise, documented, and devastating. At 6:30 a.m. Harper's laptop chimed softly. Sent, she said simply, looking up from her coffee. The email with all our evidence had just landed in 47 inboxes across Riverton. By 6:45, my phone exploded with notifications. The first call came from Pastor Williams himself. I let it go to voicemail, listening to his message minutes later. Maya, this is Pastor Williams from Cedar Bridge. We've received some deeply concerning documentation. An emergency board meeting has been called for 8 a.m. Please know that the church takes these matters very seriously. Captain Willis from the Academy texted at 6:52. Caldwell saw the documentation. Security will be increased at graduation. Nobody disrupts my ceremony. You have my word. Then Roy started calling. 7 missed calls in 5 minutes, each angrier than the last based on the voicemails he left. The final one was barely coherent. You little bitch, you think you can destroy me? I'll ruin you. I'll come to that ceremony and drag you off that stage myself. You're dead to me. You hear me? Dead. Save that one especially, Harper said, already forwarding it to the documentation file. Terroristic threats, recorded and time-stamped. At 7:15, Trent's Instagram went live. He was in his car, ranting to his followers. My stepsister is trying to destroy our family with lies. She's sending fake documents everywhere. This is what happens when you try to help someone and they stab you in the back. But his followers weren't buying it. Comments flooded in. Bro, we saw the live stream last night. Your dad hit her. We all saw it. Delete this before you make it worse. Harper screen recorded everything before Trent could delete it. At 7:30, Roy called again. This time, I answered. How dare you? He seethed without preamble. The church called. My boss called. You've destroyed everything. I documented everything, I corrected calmly. There's a difference. I'm coming to that graduation. You're not walking across that stage. Actually, Captain Willis just informed me that anyone attempting to disrupt the ceremony will be arrested for trespassing and disturbing the peace. The restraining order paperwork is already being filed. The silence on his end was deafening. Then, quieter but more menacing. Your mother will never forgive you for this. Mom made her choice 14 years ago, I replied. I'm making mine today. He hung up. Immediately. My phone rang again. Mom this time. I stared at her contact photo, taken years ago when she still smiled genuinely, before Roy had hollowed her out. I let it go to voicemail. Her message was exactly what I expected. Maya, how could you do this to us? Roy is just trying to teach you responsibility. Please don't go through with this. Think of the family. The family. As if that word hadn't been weaponized against me for over a decade. At 8 a.m. While Harper drove me to the venue, her phone lit up with updates. The church board was meeting. 3 news vans were already at Riverton High School's stadium. The district attorney's office had acknowledged receipt of our complaint and assigned a prosecutor to review it. Roy just posted on Facebook, Harper said at a red light, showing me her phone. His post was a masterpiece of manipulation, praying for my troubled stepdaughter who has chosen to spread lies about our family on what should be a day of celebration. Despite her actions, we love her and pray she finds peace. The comments were split, some offering prayers and support, others questioning why there was video evidence if these were lies. One brave soul posted, "Didn't you get $23,000 from the church while she was paying your bills?" By 8:45, we arrived at the stadium. Other graduates were already gathering in their dress uniforms, excited chatter filling the air. I stood apart, pressing concealer over the bruise on my cheek, when Lieutenant Morrison approached. "Caldwell," she said quietly. "Captain Willis briefed me. You need anything?" "Just to walk across that stage, ma'am." She studied my face, noting the carefully hidden bruising. "You documented everything. Every detail, ma'am." "Good." She paused, then added quietly, "What you're doing takes courage. Real courage. Not everyone has the strength to stand up to their abusers." At 9:15, I saw the first police cruiser arrive, parking strategically near the main entrance. Then another. By 9:30, there were 4 units stationed around the stadium. Harper showed me her phone. Cedar Bridge Fellowship just posted a statement. The church's Facebook page had a carefully worded announcement. Cedar Bridge Fellowship has suspended all financial assistance programs pending a full audit. We take allegations of fraud extremely seriously and are cooperating fully with law enforcement. Anyone who has been affected by financial misconduct is encouraged to contact us directly. Roy's employer also just posted in the Riverton Community Group. Harper continued. They've placed him on administrative leave pending investigation. The responses came flooding in. Other families Roy had borrowed money from. Co-workers he'd manipulated with sob stories about his troubled stepdaughter. The owner of our corner store posted that Roy owed $600 on a tab he'd claimed I refused to help pay. At 9:45, as graduates began lining up, Trent appeared. His face was blotchy, eyes red. He stormed up to me, phone already recording. "You destroyed our lives," he shouted, drawing stares from other graduates. "Dad's lost everything because of your lies." Everything I submitted was documented fact, I replied calmly, aware of the multiple phones now recording us. "Bank records don't lie. Trent, neither does video evidence. He was trying to help you. He stole $54,000 from me while collecting $23,000 in fraudulent assistance. That's not help. That's theft." Trent's face went purple, so reminiscent of his father. He raised his hand, and I saw security moving toward us, but I didn't flinch. "Go ahead," I said quietly. "Hit me. Add to the evidence." His hand dropped. Behind him, I could see Roy's truck in the parking lot, Roy himself standing beside it, held back by 2 officers checking his ID against their tablets. "This isn't over," Trent hissed. "You're right." I agreed. "The IRS investigation hasn't even started yet." He blanched and retreated. As the clock struck 10, the processional music began. I took my place in line, bruised but unbroken, watching Roy being turned away at the gate. The revolution had begun, and it was being live-streamed. The stadium lights gleamed off our dress uniforms as we processed onto the field. 500 folding chairs faced the elevated stage, already filling with families clutching flowers and balloons. The morning drizzle had stopped, leaving the air clean and sharp. I kept my eyes forward, aware of the murmurs rippling through the crowd as people recognized me from the morning's social media storm. The LED screen flanking the stage cycled through graduate photos and academy highlights. In 20 minutes, it would show something very different. I took my assigned seat in the third row, feeling the weight of concealer over bruises, the ache in my ribs with each breath. My honor cord should have been draped over my shoulders. Instead, I wore only the basic dress uniform, pristine and pressed, the academy crest catching sunlight. Captain Willis took the podium at 10:15 sharp. "Ladies and gentlemen, families and friends, welcome to the Mountain State Public Safety Academy graduation ceremony." The crowd settled. I spotted Harper in the fifth row of the audience, phone ready. 3 news cameras were positioned at the back, their red recording lights steady. Security officers stood at each entrance, tablets in hand, checking faces against photos. "Before we begin," Captain Willis continued, his voice carrying across the field, "I want to address something important. This academy stands for integrity, courage, and justice. We train our graduates not just to enforce the law, but to embody it. Sometimes that means standing up to corruption and abuse, especially when it comes from those closest to us." The crowd stirred. Several phones rose to record. At 10:22, commotion erupted near the main entrance. Roy had returned, this time with Pastor Williams and 2 church board members. They were arguing with security, Roy's voice carrying across the stadium. "That's my daughter. I have every right to be here." Security held firm. One officer spoke into his radio, and within moments, 2 Riverton PD units pulled up. I watched it unfold like a scene from training. De-escalation attempted, aggression documented, consequences applied. The ceremony continued. Awards were announced for marksmanship, physical fitness, academic excellence. When they reached the Character Award, Lieutenant Morrison took the mic. "This award recognizes moral courage under pressure," she said. "This year's recipient documented and reported extensive domestic abuse and financial fraud, choosing justice over silence, truth over comfort." She paused. "However, we'll announce this recipient later, under special circumstances." The crowd murmured. Everyone knew she meant me. At 10:35, the screen changed to display "Celebrating Our Graduates' Support Systems." Photos appeared of graduates with their families. Other students had submitted pictures with parents, siblings, spouses. When my slot came, the screen showed 2 photos, one with Mrs. Chin, my high school PE teacher who'd first taught me self-defense, and another with Sandra Williams, a fellow Academy graduate who'd talked me through panic attacks during training. No Roy, no Mom, my chosen family, not my assigned one. That's when Roy broke through. He'd circled around to a side entrance while security was distracted by Pastor Williams. He charged down the aisle, drunk and raging, his work boots slipping on the wet grass. "You lying bitch," he screamed, finger pointed at me. "You destroyed everything. My job, my reputation, everything." The entire stadium turned. Phones rose like a wave. The news cameras swiveled. Security moved to intercept, but I stood first, my voice carrying clearly. "Let him speak." Captain Willis nodded slightly. Security stepped back but remained ready. Roy stumbled to the front, his face mottled with rage and alcohol. "This girl," he spat, pointing at me, "is a liar and a thief. She owes our family everything. I raised her, fed her, put a roof over her head." "You stole $54,000 from me," I said calmly, my voice picked up by the captain's mic, "while claiming to the church that I contributed nothing. Lies. I have the receipts." I pulled out my phone, connected it to the AV system through the app Harper had set up. The LED screen changed to show bank transfers. $1,500 monthly for 3 years. Every payment documented. The crowd gasped. The transfers were undeniable. My name. Roy's name. Dates and amounts in stark clarity. That was rent, Roy shouted. Room and board. While you collected this, the screen changed to show the church's assistance records, $23,000 over 2 years, for claiming I was disabled and unable to contribute. Pastor Williams stood up in the crowd. Mr. Baxter, is this true? She's manipulating everything. Then explain this. The screen changed once more. Video filled the display, not the full assault, but the audio was clear. Roy's voice echoed across the stadium. You're nothing but a drain on this family. You're trash. Maya. Always have been. Then the sound of impact, my gasp of pain. Trent's laughter in the background. You recorded me without permission, Roy screamed, lunging toward the stage. This time, security didn't hesitate. 2 officers intercepted him, efficient and professional. As they pulled his arms behind his back, Captain Willis spoke into the mic. Mr. Baxter, you're under arrest for disturbing the peace, criminal trespass, and assault based on video evidence. You have the right to remain silent. This is her fault, Roy screamed as handcuffs clicked. She destroyed our family, Elaine. Tell them what she did. Everyone turned to look for my mother. She wasn't there. As officers led Roy away, the screen changed one final time. A statement from Cedar Bridge Fellowship appeared. Effective immediately. Roy Baxter must return all fraudulently obtained funds. The church is pursuing full legal remedies and has implemented new verification procedures. We apologize to Maya Caldwell and all those affected by this deception. Below it, a statement from the Riverton District Attorney. Our office is pursuing charges of wire fraud, assault, and financial exploitation. We thank Ms. Caldwell for her courage in coming forward. The stadium was silent except for Roy's fading curses as police cars pulled away. Then, slowly, applause began. It started in the back, spreading forward until the entire crowd was on their feet. Captain Willis returned to the podium. Ladies and gentlemen, what you've just witnessed is exactly what we train our graduates to do. To stand for truth, to document corruption, to protect the vulnerable even when they themselves are the vulnerable. He looked directly at me. Cadet Caldwell, please come forward. On shaking legs, I climbed the stage. The captain handed me a new honor cord, gold and pristine. For exceptional moral courage, he said, loud enough for everyone to hear. And for showing us all that justice doesn't require violence. It requires truth. The applause thundered as he placed the cord over my shoulders. In the crowd, Harper was crying. The news cameras zoomed in. And somewhere in a police car, Roy was learning what consequences felt like. The police station's fluorescent lights hummed as I gave my formal statement at 11:45 a.m. Still in my dress uniform with the new honor cord draped over my shoulders, Detective Rachel Martinez, a veteran of the Domestic Violence Unit, typed carefully as I walked through 14 years of abuse, each detail supported by the evidence Harper had organized into neat folders. The financial fraud is federal jurisdiction, Detective Martinez explained, sliding papers across the desk. The FBI's white-collar crime division will want to interview you next week, but the assault charges those we can file immediately. Through the window, I could see Roy in the holding cell. His rage collapsed into sullen silence. He'd already been read his rights twice once at the stadium, again upon booking. The orange jumpsuit made him look smaller, older, like all his borrowed power had been stripped away with his street clothes. The restraining order's been expedited. Martinez continued. Emergency protective order is already in effect. He can't come within 500 feet of you, your workplace, or your residence. My phone buzzed constantly. Harper was filtering messages, but she forwarded the important ones. The district attorney wanted to meet Monday. 3 news stations requested interviews. Most surprisingly, 17 people had reached out claiming Roy had borrowed money from them over the years, small amounts. 50 here, 100 there. always with elaborate stories about family emergencies. At 12:30 p.m., Pastor Williams arrived at the station with 2 church board members and their attorney. They didn't come to support Roy. They came to file their own complaint. $23,000 obtained through false pretenses, the attorney stated, placing bank records on Martinez's desk. Mr. Baxter signed affidavits claiming his stepdaughter was disabled and unable to work. We have evidence she was employed full-time throughout the period. I watched through the observation window as they presented their case. Roy had submitted forged medical documents suggesting I had a cognitive disability that prevented employment. The forgeries were amateur. Anyone checking would have discovered the doctor's license number belonged to a veterinarian in Ohio. We're prepared to cooperate fully with prosecution, Pastor Williams said, his voice carrying through the thin walls. Cedar Bridge Fellowship was built on trust. That trust was violated. At 1:15 p.m., something unexpected happened. Trent was brought in, not in handcuffs but clearly under duress. His live stream from the previous night had backfired spectacularly. What he'd meant as mockery had become evidence, and his own followers had screen-recorded everything before he could delete it. "I didn't do nothing," he protested as officers explained he was being charged as an accessory to assault for filming and encouraging the attack. "You posted, 'Finally, Dad's teaching her a lesson.'" The officer read from a printout. "You zoomed in on the impact. You laughed when she fell." Trent's face went white. "It was just content for the gram. Content that documented a felony assault you encouraged and failed to report," the officer replied. Through all of this, one person remained absent: Mom. I'd received 3 voicemails from her, each more desperate than the last. She wasn't angry anymore, just confused and frightened. Roy's arrest had shattered her carefully constructed denial. Without him telling her what to think, she didn't know how to process what had happened. At 2 p.m., the FBI arrived. Agent Sarah Coleman, White Collar Crimes Division, had driven down from Denver. She'd already pulled Roy's tax returns, bank statements, and employment records. "The fraud extends beyond the church," she informed me, spreading documents across the conference table. "He's been claiming you as a dependent on his taxes while simultaneously collecting your rent payments. That's tax fraud on top of wire fraud." The numbers were staggering. Roy had saved approximately $18,000 in taxes over 5 years by claiming me as a dependent. Combined with the church assistance and my payments to him, he'd netted nearly $95,000 from his various schemes. "We're also investigating the COVID relief fraud," Agent Coleman added. He claimed his construction business had 20 employees. It had 3. By 3 p.m., local news had picked up the story. Harper showed me the Channel 7 report, "Local man arrested at Academy graduation after years of alleged fraud." They'd interviewed other Academy graduates who'd witnessed the confrontation. One said, "Maya showed us what real courage looks like, standing up to abuse with truth instead of violence." The church had released a fuller statement, announcing a community meeting for that evening to address the situation. They were establishing a victims fund for anyone Roy had defrauded and implementing new oversight measures for their assistance programs. At 3:45, Roy's public defender arrived. Through the observation window, I watched them confer. The defender's expression grew increasingly grim as she reviewed the evidence. When she saw the video, she closed her folder and said something that made Roy slam his fist on the table. "He's realizing he has no defense," Detective Martinez explained. "The evidence is overwhelming. His best bet is a plea deal, but with federal charges pending, he's looking at significant time." My phone rang another unknown number. I almost ignored it, but Harper checked and nodded. "It's the CEO of North Star Freight Solutions," I answered, stepping into the hallway. "Ms. Caldwell," the CEO said, "I've been following today's events. I want you to know that North Star stands behind employees who show this kind of integrity. Your position with our security division isn't just secure, we're expediting your advancement track. Leaders need moral courage. You've proven you have it." By 4:30 p.m., the formal charging documents were filed. Roy faced assault and battery criminal threats, wire fraud, federal tax fraud, federal false statements to obtain benefits, disturbing the peace Trent faced, accessory to assault, failure to report a crime, cyber harassment. The judge set Roy's bail at $250,000, far beyond what he could afford, especially with his assets frozen pending the fraud investigation. As I signed the last of my statements at 5 p.m., Detective Martinez pulled me aside. "You know what's remarkable. Most victims never come forward. They're too scared, too beaten down, too convinced no one will believe them. You didn't just save yourself, you've given others permission to speak up." She was right. By evening, 7 more people had filed reports about Roy's financial manipulations. The church had received dozens of calls from members admitting they'd suspected something but hadn't known how to act. As Harper drove me home, not to Roy's house, but to my new apartment I'd secretly leased the week before, my phone showed one final message. It was from Mom. "I'm sorry. For everything. I see it now. I see what he was. What I let him do. I'm so sorry." I didn't respond. Some bridges, once burned, couldn't be rebuilt. They could only light the way forward. The law had done what I'd planned, compressed Roy's world until he couldn't breathe, couldn't manipulate, couldn't escape the consequences he'd avoided for so long. Justice, served cold and documented in triplicate. The rain had returned by 6 p.m., a soft drizzle that turned the stadium lights into halos. The graduation ceremony had resumed after the disruption, but now we were back for the evening celebration, the formal pinning ceremony where we'd receive our badges. I stood on the same stage where Roy had been arrested hours earlier, watching families gather under umbrellas. The LED screen no longer showed evidence of fraud and assault. Instead, it displayed our class motto, "Integrity first, service always." Captain Willis called my name. As I walked forward, the crowd rose to their feet. Not just my fellow graduates, but everyone, the families who'd witnessed the morning's chaos, the reporters who'd stayed to cover the complete story, even the security officers who'd arrested Roy. "Cadet Maya Caldwell," Captain Willis announced, his voice carrying across the field, "demonstrated exceptional courage today, but more than that, she showed us what justice looks like when pursued through proper channels, with evidence and truth as weapons rather than violence." He pinned the badge to my uniform, the metal cold and solid against my chest. "This badge represents your commitment to protect and serve. You've already proven you can protect yourself and others from predators who hide behind family ties. That's the hardest protection of all." The Master of Ceremonies took the podium. "Before we conclude, we have an unexpected addition to tonight's program." He looked directly at me. "Ms. Caldwell, would you remain on stage?" Confused, I stayed in place as a court officer approached the podium carrying official documents. My heart raced. Had something gone wrong with Roy's charges? "Ladies and gentlemen," the MC continued, "what happened this morning has led to immediate legal action. The court has issued summary judgment in several matters that couldn't wait." The court officer handed me an envelope. Inside was a check for $23,000, the exact amount Roy had fraudulently obtained from Cedar Bridge Fellowship. "The church's insurance company has agreed to immediate restitution to Ms. Caldwell," the MC explained, "with the understanding they'll recover the funds from Mr. Baxter through civil proceedings." Another envelope. This one contained a legal document titled Order of Asset Preservation and Restitution. A judge had frozen Roy's assets and ordered immediate return of all fraudulently obtained funds: his truck, purchased with my money; his motorcycle, bought while claiming poverty; the gaming systems Trent had flaunted on social media. All of it would be liquidated. Furthermore, the MC continued as the crowd murmured in amazement, North Star Freight Solutions has announced the creation of the Maya Caldwell Courage Award, a full scholarship for one Academy student per year who demonstrates exceptional integrity in the face of adversity. I stood frozen, unable to process the rapid reversals. This morning, I'd been assaulted and mocked. Tonight, I was being validated in ways I'd never imagined. Agent Coleman from the FBI stepped onto the stage. "Ms. Caldwell, the federal government takes financial fraud seriously. Based on preliminary investigation, you're entitled to treble damages for the funds obtained through wire fraud. That's $162,000 plus interest and penalties." The number hit me like a physical force. Years of eating ramen, of working overnight shifts, of watching Roy spend my money while calling me worthless, all of it was being reversed in a single evening. "But wait," the MC said, a slight smile playing at his lips. "There's one more matter to address." The LED screen lit up with a familiar face. Pastor Williams, broadcasting live from Cedar Bridge Fellowship. "Maya," he said, his voice echoing across the stadium. "Our congregation voted unanimously tonight. We're not just returning the funds Roy stole. We're doubling it as an apology for our failure to verify his claims. $46,000 will be deposited into your account Monday morning. We failed you, and while money can't undo the harm, it can help you build the future you deserve." The crowd erupted. Through the rain and tears, I saw Harper jumping up and down in the audience, her phone recording everything. The news cameras were rolling, broadcasting live. My fellow graduates were cheering. But the final moment came when another figure approached the stage. Mom. She looked smaller somehow, diminished without Roy's shadow to hide in. Security moved to intercept her, but I raised my hand. "Let her through." She climbed the steps slowly, each movement uncertain. When she reached me, she didn't speak. Instead, she held out a folded document. I recognized it immediately. Roy's life insurance policy, the one where he'd named her sole beneficiary. "I'm removing him from everything," she said quietly, her voice picked up by the microphones. "And I'm signing it all over to you. The house equity, the savings he hid from you. Everything. It's not enough. I know. Nothing will ever be enough. But it's a start." The rain intensified, but no one moved. We stood there, mother and daughter, separated by 14 years of enablement, but connected by this one moment of accountability. "I can't forgive you," I told her honestly. "Not yet. Maybe not ever." "I know," she replied, "but I'll spend whatever time I have left trying to earn it." As she walked away, Captain Willis returned to the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen, what you've witnessed today is justice. Not revenge, but justice. Ms. Caldwell could have responded to violence with violence. Instead, she chose law. She chose truth. She chose to let the system work." He turned to me. "Your badge number is 7892. Wear it with pride." The ceremony concluded at 8:30 p.m. As graduates dispersed into the rainy night, I stood on the empty stage, looking at where Roy had been arrested hours earlier. The spot was just wet concrete now, no trace of the drama that had unfolded. Harper appeared beside me, umbrella in hand. "So, what now?" "Now," I touched my badge, feeling its weight. "Now I start the job I trained for, protecting people who can't protect themselves, making sure no one else spends 14 years thinking they deserve abuse." As we walked toward the parking lot, my phone buzzed with a notification from the district attorney's office. Roy had been denied bail reduction. He'd remain in custody until trial. The federal charges would likely result in 5 to 7 years imprisonment. The state charges would add another 2 to 3. Trent had been released on bail but fired from his job after his employer saw the live stream. His followers had abandoned him, his accounts banned for promoting violence. The revolution was complete, not through violence or rage, but through patient documentation, strategic disclosure, and the beautiful machinery of justice properly applied. Tomorrow, I'd start my new job, move into my new apartment, begin my new life. But tonight, standing in the rain with my badge heavy on my chest and my future finally my own, I simply breathed, free. Thank you so much for listening to my story. I'd love to know where in the world you're hearing this. Please comment below and let's connect across the miles. If this story resonated with you, please subscribe to the channel and share your thoughts. Your experiences and perspectives matter, and together we can shed light on these important issues. Remember, documentation is protection, truth is power, and justice doesn't require violence, it requires courage.